Don't listen to Phil.
Hi guys, it's me again, Phil Andrew. Welcome back to my podcast. I am so happy you're back. So, my true crime story for today's episode is about the unsolved and shocking murder case of veteran actress Nida Blanca. And this actually really blew my mind, you guys, because I didn't know about the case being unsolved. And so I was curious and read all the news articles and just basically fell down on a rabbit hole, you know? And so here we are. And guys, let me tell you, this story is probably the heaviest one yet that I have ever read. So I just want to warn you, and you might want to prepare yourself for some details in this story that are so disheartening. But don't worry, that's why I'm here, to make you feel a little better, I hope. And as always, we will end on a good and positive note. I will promise you that. So let's just get started, shall we? Let's get right into it. Veteran actress Nida Blanca, 65 years old, was brutally murdered in Green Hills, a suburb of San Juan, Philippines. Her body was discovered with 13 stab wounds in the backseat of her car, which was located on the 6th floor of a parking lot in a residential commercial building. The murder sparked a national outrage and has left the Filipino people in shock. Yes, I so remember this moment. This was really shocking, you guys. Now, before I continue, I want to talk about her history, or what you might call her biography, because this is for my listeners who aren't from the Philippines and probably don't know who she is, okay? So, her real name is actually Dorothy Ginto Jones, and she was a Filipina actress. She was better known by her stage name, Nida Blanca. In the 1950s, she had a successful acting career in movies, many of which were with actor Nestor de Villa. Now, so in the Philippine media, we actually have this thing called Love Team. And it's basically an actor and actress who portray themselves to the public as a, romantic couple. So there's that, just an information out there. So she became even more well known thanks to her role on the television series John and Marcia, which is a Filipino sitcom, and it ran from 1973 to 1990. During her 50-year career, she was in more than 163 movies and 14 TV shows. And Yes Magazine, in fact, named her one of the 15 best actresses of all time. Yes, which is why when we first heard about this in the news back then, we were really shocked. And there was basically, like I said earlier, a national outrage, because she was one of the most respected actresses here in the Philippines. And I think I was in my freshman year in high school, I think, when this happened. Okay, so anyway, Nida Blanca was originally from the town of Gapan in the province of Nueva Ecija, and her mother, Inocencia Acueza, was Filipino, and her father, John William Jones II, was an American soldier. And her birthday is on January 6th, and she was born in 1936. And she was actually just 14 years old when she made her debut in her first film, which was discovered and produced by a former movie queen, Delia Razon, also one of the well-known actresses at the time. And she then became one of the biggest stars at LVN Studios. And this LVN Studios was a Filipino film studio that was one of the biggest in the history of the Philippine cinema, and the country's most important place for film post-production until 2005. And she also won awards for both movies and TV shows, and was put on the board of MTRCB, which is this MTRCB is a government agency in the Philippines that looks TV shows, movies, and other promotional materials, and decides how they should be rated. And MTRCB means Movie and Television Review and Classification Board. And she was previously married to Victorino Torres and had a daughter named Kaye. And they eventually split up when Kaye was 2 years old. Now, let's talk about the murder and what really happened that day, okay? So it was 12:30 p.m. on November 6, 2001. And she left her home in White Plains, Quezon City, and drove her car to the MTRCB office in Green Hills, San Juan, Metro Manila. So the MTRCB office is actually on the 33rd floor of the Atlanta Center building. And again, like I mentioned earlier, she was a well-known actress with a long career who served on the MTRCB board. So twice a week, she went to screenings and gave ratings for movies and TV shows. Now, most of the time, the screenings end between 5 and 6 p.m. And after attending a meeting that lasted for 4 hours and a movie review, she left her office at around 5 p.m. And according to one co-worker, Nida received a phone call and then she left. It was said that Nida told MTRCB employees that she was going to a wake at Santuario de San Antonio in Forbes Park, Makati. And this part, guys, really broke my heart because before she left, it was said that she glanced at the MTRCB employees and said with a smile, "See you tomorrow." I know. And at 10 p.m., Nida's personal assistant, Elena de la Paz, noticed that Nida had not come home yet. So she called Nida's friends and asked them where she was. And then Nida's friends said they had not seen her either. And so Elena went to the Atlanta Center with her two relatives to find Nida. And then they asked the guard, and then the guard confirmed that Nida's car was actually there. And the thing is, they only found the car and they still couldn't find her. And so Elena thought Nida just went out with a friend in a different car. So, she just came home at 11:30 p.m. and then finally told Nida's husband, Rod Strunk, that they couldn't find her. Now, other sources also stated that Rod Strunk, her husband, actually began searching for her at 8 p.m. And then the security guards at the building where her car was parked also stated that they began searching for her only after discovering that she had not claimed her parking ticket. And this information got me thinking that it really is quite impossible that nobody really thought about just taking a quick peek inside the car when they were searching for her, But then other sources also said that the people who killed her must have done it somewhere else and then put her body in the car. So, maybe somebody really checked the car and then saw that nobody was inside, I don't know. So anyway, so the next day, on November 7th at around 8 in the morning, a roving security guard in the Atlanta Center was inspecting the 6th floor parking lot, and then he noticed something dark on the floor. And then he came closer. He realized that it's actually blood. And so he followed the trail of blood, and it led him to a car that was parked a few meters away, and that was confirmed to be Nida Blanca's car because it was a green Nissan Sentra. The security guard found that the car was locked, and then you guys, this is it. He saw Nida Blanca in the backseat of the car, and she looked like she was sleeping because she was actually slumped in the backseat. When you're tired, you just sit in the chair, doze off or sleep, and that's kind of the position or something. So before I continue, a warning first, okay? Because I am going to talk about the initial investigation, and then it includes all the details from the autopsy report, and this is one of the reasons why I added horrifying in the title of the episode. Okay, so if it's too much for you, you can go ahead and skip forward. All right, so the autopsy report said that Nida Blanca had 13 stab wounds, most of which were small, shallow, and random. Now, these wounds were on the left side of the face, neck, and torso, and 3 of the wounds were near the armpit. She was stabbed in the neck twice, and one of the wounds reached her larynx and cut her jugular vein. And it was said that the wound that really killed her was in her neck, specifically her throat. It came from the left side, cut through the right side, hitting the jugular vein. She also sustained wounds to the back and the abdomen, and she also had marks on her face or bruises, and it was also said that her fingernails had been cut off which is a sign of torture, but the authorities wouldn't confirm this. Now, initially, it was said that because her wounds are different sizes and shapes, it is likely that more than one person hurt her. And the actress also had hematomas in both eyes, which means bad bruises in both eye and broken ribs on both sides of her body, which shows that she was hit with a blunt object and struggled before she died. And there was this TV show, the title wasn't really specified, where a medical legal expert said that some of the wounds were post mortem, meaning it might have been done after she died, which is like an overkill, whatever. It's so awful. And by the way, I didn't know what a medical legal expert was, and so I asked Google, and basically it is where medicine and law meet, and it focuses on how medical knowledge can be used to solve legal problems. And in this area of practice, cases must be proven with the help of independent medical evaluations and testimonies from the experts, where teams of independent, unbiased doctors are called in to look at the patient's claims, injuries, medical history, and treatment plans. And so from there, medical experts then give fact-based reports on a person's injuries, including what caused them, how bad they are, and what short-term and long-term effects they may have. So guys, we are actually learning a lot of random things here, I'm just trying so hard to lighten this up. Anyway, okay, moving on. And so it was said that Nida Blanca's death probably happened between 4 and 5 in the morning of November 7, 2001, which is about 3 to 4 hours before the security guard found her dead body. And this part of the article really made me sad, because one of the investigators actually hinted that if someone had seen her in her car before midnight, she might have been saved. And unfortunately, nobody did. And I'm going to tell you more about the 6th floor parking lot in just a moment, because I really find that information a bit spooky. And a SOCO officer, or scene of the crime operations officer, also said that rigor mortis had not yet fully set in when they removed the body from the car. If you don't know what it means, rigor mortis is when the joints and muscles of a dead body stiffen a few hours after death, and this usually lasts between 1 and 4 days. And so since the security guard found her 3 or 4 hours after she was killed, so naturally the body had not completely stiffened up when they took it out of the car, basically. And also, based on the blood trail that the security guard found, her body was actually dragged from location to her car. So awful. And guys, this is what I was talking about earlier when I mentioned the 6th floor, because the MTRCB building was given 6 parking spots, okay, on the 6th floor. And you guys, it was said to be very dark, and get this, there was neither a security guard station nor surveillance cameras, okay? There was only a wide-angle mirror, like a wall or something. I don't know. It's so weird. And photos show that Nida Blanca's car was parked at the very end, next to a wall, and it was partially hidden by a concrete pillar. It was like really intentional, and this shitty person who did this to her just left her there, I mean, imagine that scenario, okay? And so, after the murder, there were 3 theories about why Nida Blanca died that surfaced immediately after this crime was reported. So let's talk about that. Oh gosh, if you can hear the dog, I so hate this neighborhood. I'm planning on moving out. I can't. Anyway, so the first theory is the casino connection, because a witness testified that she saw Nida Blanca and her friend Candelaria Tantoco, who's also called Ding, as in Ding ang bato. Filipinos can relate. Anyway, yes, I remember that name, okay? Fame. Anyway, so the witness said that she saw them together at Casino Filipino on the evening of November 6, the night she was killed, and it was well known that Nida often went to the casino with Tantoco or Ding, and people say that Nida owes a lot of money to a group of people who lend money to gamblers, and there's also this rumor that says she actually gives money gamblers just to spend. to gamblers. I mean, she actually gives money to gamblers, just to spend in gambling, or I don't know. Now, according to this theory, a group of hitmen and retired generals maintained order, quote unquote, at a particular casino. So, meaning they took charge and were responsible for the operations of whatever shady businesses and other organizations that they had. And it was also rumored that there's this group of people who were in charge of the casino's money lending operation. And this was from a Yes magazine special report. And it went on and said, and I quote, from a 2 million pesos capital, it grew up to 100 million pesos. And the point person in the group was an ex-movie star who lived in Forbes Park, end quote. I wonder who that was. Now, this theory says that the ex-generals got into the casino business at first to wash or launder their own money, but they actually became enforcers and at one point even owed money. And there was said to be a list of people who owed money to this quote-unquote Forbes Park movie star. And then this ex-movie star, she supposedly got sick, and so she gave the list to her longtime friend Nida Blanca. According to a special report by Yes, their version of this theory was that Nida was not just a friend of the Forbes star, but also a partner and had money in the pot. And this theory also said that Nida was the only person who knew who was on that list after this ex-movie star, Forbes, whatever, died, after she died. And that made things worse for Nida. But some people, including me, don't like this idea because it gives Nida a bad name or a bad reputation. And the report went on to say that people who knew Nida thought of her as a simple woman who did not act like she was carrying around a big secret and always looking over her shoulder. They said that if she was really involved in that shady business, she could not have been soft and easy. Well, that's kind of argumentative, don't you think? I mean, I'm not talking about Nida specifically, but I'm talking about that statement particularly because to say if she was really involved, it's kind of like, if this statement said if she really was involved in that shady business, she couldn't have been soft and easy. If you say something like that, it's kind of like questionable because, looks and actions can be deceiving, okay? Because, there are people in the world who seem to be so good, innocent, and kind, but who actually have dark secrets. But in my opinion, I don't think Nida Blanca was a shady person. I don't know. I don't know anything. Anyway, guys, let's move on and continue before I go off topic and get off on a tangent. Okay, another theory is the Jose Velarde bank account connection. And if you're not familiar with the Jose Velarde account, during the impeachment trial of our very own former President Joseph Estrada, the name Jose Velarde came up. Remember that time, my Filipino listeners? Anyway, so yeah, former President Estrada was accused of plunder and perjury, which is like theft and lying basically. And it was like a mess. I so remember that moment. Anyway, yeah, he basically used that name, Jose Velarde, as an alias on his bank account, which is against the law, of course. Now, there was a rumor that one of Nida Blanca's checks led to that bank account. Jose Velarde account. But, and it's a big but, Nida Blanca died in November 2001, which is too far away to be a coincidence because Estrada was removed from office in 2001. This January 2001, I mean. Now, things were more complicated in this theory because it was said that former President Estrada gave Nida a lot of money while he had to deal with the impeachment case. And it was also said that Nida wanted to give the money back to Estrada, but there were greedy people around her, apparently, that stopped her from doing that. And since Estrada was no longer in power, or no longer the president, so they were like saying, there's no point of giving the money back because Estrada was already impeached or whatever. And then there's another version of this theory that said, Nida Blanca no longer wanted to return the money, so Estrada's loyal people said she needed to be taught a lesson, hence the killing. But some people, like Nida's longtime secretary Elena de la Paz, remember her, had doubts about this theory. The secretary said, and this is in Tagalog, and I quote, "Walang pera si Nida lately. inutang pa nga niya nitong nakaraan ang pension ni Rod, end quote. Which means Nida has been broke for a while. In the past, he even owed Rod's pension, end quote. And, of course, the last theory, the husband theory. Yeah, he was the main suspect during this investigation. His name is Rod Strunk. He was the main suspect. He was accused of hiring a hitman to kill Nida Blanca after she disinherited him. And according to the NBI, or the National Bureau of Investigation, it was a story of greed and betrayal and a murder mystery that looked like it came from a Hollywood movie. And yeah, I'll also agree. I could say the same thing because reading all about it in various news articles, oh my gosh, it definitely is like a movie plot or something. Now, let's talk about him real quick before I continue with the theory, okay? Born in Fresno, California, Rod Strunk's real name is actually Roger Lawrence Strunk. And if you're from the US, you probably know him, I think, because he was actually a well-known he was actually well known as Rod Lauren as a singer actor, and I didn't know this actually. And as an actor, he did most of his work on TV in the 1960s, and he was on Alfred Hitchcock Presents, among others. And as a singer, his only big hit was If I Had a Girl, which peaked at number 31 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the 1960s. And after that, from 1962 to 1969, he was in a series of low-budget Hollywood movies. And then he met Nida Blanca while filming John Derek's Once Before I Die in the Philippines, and in 1979, they married in the United States. Now, it is said that this is the theory that makes the most sense and is the most likely to be true so far because Nida and Rod's marriage was actually failing as the years passed. And a member of the house staff said that they slept in different rooms and that Rod was caught using drugs at some point in the 1990s. But, Nida eventually forgave him. And also that Nida had talked to Kay, their daughter, before about how Rod's money was out of control and he was now taking advantage of Nida and had an interest in her property and insurance. And having said that, Nida Blanca actually owned properties worth 85 million pesos, wow, including a $300,000 California home and a 10 million peso condominium in Green Hills, San Juan, which in her will said would go to her only daughter, Kay. So, obviously, Rod Strunk had been disinherited by her and he would have received nothing if Nida had another marriage. Now, in the event that Nida died suddenly before she was able to legally end the marriage, Rod Strunk would be considered a legal spouse under the law and would be entitled to a portion of Nida's assets. And so that's basically the idea of this theory. And the theory also said that Nida's husband was so angry with her because, like I said, she left all of the property to her daughter Kay and left him out of her will, and that Rod hired a professional killer when he couldn't get Nida to show him the will. And then people also said that their marriage was rocky and that Rod had an affair. And it was also stated that Nida was a battered wife. This was actually the theory that Task Force Marsha tried to sell to the public, and most people believed it. But there were some people who did not agree with this. Now, Task Force Marsha, for listeners who are not familiar with this one, is a body or group set up by the Philippine National Police to look into Nida Blanca's murder. Okay, so Task Force Marsha, remember that name. But there were also people who did not agree with this theory. Again, veteran radio host and announcer Inday Badiday was one of them, and I'm pretty sure some of my Filipino listeners here remember her because she's an icon and she was known as Philippine television's queen of showbiz talk shows and as well as queen of intrigues, right? Yeah. Anyway, I remember her for sure. So in the Yes Magazine article, Inday said that it did not make sense that Rod, who was the main suspect, was still living in the same house as the rest of Nida's family. Inday also figured that if Nida really was a battered wife, one of her friends would have known and told her. Again, I find this argumentative because there is just certain things that you do not share with friends or even family, okay? So I don't agree with this. Not everything, it's just not, I'm telling you. But anyway, The report also included the opinion of a veteran ABS-CBN reporter who was not convinced that Rod committed the crime. And the reporter was quoted as saying, "I admit after covering the story for how many days that I am sympathetic. Fall guy siya dito. So analysis ko sa kanya, small mind lang siya, mababaw ang kaligayahan." And that translates to, he is the fall guy in this situation. So based on what I know about him, I think he's just small-minded and easy to please. And the report also went on to say, and I quote, "He's not capable of masterminding something as grand as this." End quote. I don't know. And now, you guys, after discussing those theories with you, here comes a random named Philip Midell. I'm laughing because this is such a circus of events and there's just a lot of things going on. So now, anyway, yes, there's this random guy named Philip Midell who suddenly just turned himself in and said he killed the veteran actress Nida Blanca. And so let's talk about this quote-unquote suspect. So, Task Force Marcia held a press conference on November 19, 2001, where Philip Midell, who was dressed entirely in black, claimed responsibility for the murder. He claimed to be a professional killer who had been hired by a middleman, Mike Martinez, and he said that he was paid 50,000 pesos to complete the task. Now, Midell also explained that he had no idea his target was the veteran actress, and that his conscience couldn't bear it when he discovered she was Nida. Oh my gosh, I so do not believe this. And which I find ridiculous, because at that time, who wouldn't know Nida Blanca? I mean, yeah, that's almost impossible. Like, if you're a Filipino living in the Philippines, of course, and in the late 1990s or early 2000s. But, at the same time, I also think it's possible because, I remember reading, and I also mentioned this to you guys, that the 6th floor parking lot area wasn't very well lit and it didn't have any security cameras. And so it's possible that he really didn't recognize her and only heard about it in the news. I don't know. Anyway, so Reynaldo Coco, the head of the NBI, said that most of the charges were based on Midell's confession that Rod Strunk, an American, paid him to kill Nida Blanca because Jones threatened to end the rocky, meaning Nida Blanca, threatened to end the rocky 10-year marriage. So the next couple of things that I'm going to say to you guys are what Midell, the suspect, said. And this is basically how he got the assignment. So Mike Martinez, again, the middleman, called him at the beginning of October 2001 and asked him to join a project they called the, quote, Tantoko Project, unquote. Remember that name, Tantoko? That's the family name of Ding. Remember her, Anita's friend, the one she was with in the casino thingy? Yeah, that's the one. That's the name of the project. Anyway, so the project was to make a, quote, Chinese man's wife, unquote, stop stealing. And so, Martinez called Midell on November 6, 2001, the day of the murder, and they agreed to meet. And at around 5 p.m., while Martinez was still not there, Midell, the suspect, said that there's this white man who came up to him and asked if he was Midell, and then he said yes. And he asked the white man where Martinez was, and then the white man just told him that they would meet him somewhere else. And so they drove by the Kamayan restaurant on EDSA, where Midell had heard Martinez was waiting. And then, for some reason, they went somewhere else. But the white man, whom he referred to as Rad, as in R-A-D, so let's just call him Rad from here on out, okay? So, Rad couldn't find the person he was looking for. And so they went back to EDSA, and it was about 9 p.m. And they went to the Kamayan restaurant. They had dinner, and it was a romantic evening. Just kidding. Yeah, okay, so they went to Kamayan restaurant, they had dinner, and while they were eating, that's when Midell was told to watch and scare a quote-unquote Chinese man's wife. Remember the Tontoko project I mentioned earlier? So that's the assignment. And then Martinez did not show up at all. That son of a bitch. Okay, so at around 10 p.m., Midell and Rad left the restaurant and went to the 6th floor of the Atlanta Center. They waited until midnight next to a dark green car, which was Nida Blanca's Nissan Sentra. And so Rod had a spare key for Nida's car and told Midell to get inside the car and wait. And according to him, while waiting, he used the time he had by texting his friends and then go to sleep. I mean, I'm laughing because I'm sorry. I mean, this part of this claim, when I read about this one, I was like, oh, what was he doing? He's like texting or updating his status to his friends, like, hey friends, I'm waiting here at Nida Blanca's car, whatever. And wait, he claimed that he didn't recognize Nida Blanca. I don't know. Anyway, after a few hours, so around 1 a.m., the lights from a car that was parked next to him woke him up, and then Rod returned with his wife as well as another woman. And after that, Ron got into an argument with Nida about the will, and this is where things start to get interesting because according to Medell, Rod pushed Nida, and then he and the other girl hit and kicked her. And I don't know, for some reason, he took that as a sign to join in, and he was like, oh, that must be it. That's the assignment. And so Medell joined in and started hitting and stabbing Nida. He stabbed her in the neck and on the left side of her body. And around 2 a.m., Medell, Rod, and this other woman left the parking lot, and when he got home, he put the knife under the sink in his kitchen. And then when Medell found out that the victim was the famous Nida Blanca, he was shocked, according to him. Now, the public found out from this confession that Medell was actually talking about Rod's trunk, Nida Blanca's husband, and Ding Tantoco, Nida's casino friend. And the thing about Medell was that he was always adding up random things during his confession. For instance, he said in one of the interviews that Rod was gay and then Toko was a lesbian, and that's it. No other additional information that at least relevant to the case. He was like loving the attention, I think. And of course, Rod's trunk said that the claims were false. Ding Tantoko also said she hadn't done anything wrong and she passed the lie detector test. But you guys, here's the twist. And this really made things more complicated. Are you ready? Okay. So, 4 days after his confession, Medell, motherfucking Medell, took back everything he said. Yep. Yes. Let that sink in. Medell recanted his statements on national television, you guys, on November 23, 2001, during a preliminary investigation claiming he had been tortured and forced to make a statement under duress, which only added more complexity and confusion to the already disheartening murder case. I am so mad when I read this one. And then he told the Department of Justice that he was tortured and forced to take the blame for the crime. And in one of his interviews, he also said that the PNP had gotten rid of Martinez, the middleman. And according to the Yes article, Martinez's family said that he was actually missing. Martinez actually was missing and had not been found. Now, let's talk about the investigation, because this whole thing was like a circus. Oh my gosh. And a lot of rumors and other confusing information. So here we go. So even though Medell recanted or changed his story, the Philippine prosecutors still believe Strunk was the main suspect, and even Kay Torres, remember the daughter, stated that she had a strong suspicion that her stepfather Rod, who lived off of Nida Blanca's wealth, was involved in some way with the death of her mother. But the thing is, the murder charges were just based on circumstantial evidence and what other new witnesses said. And yeah, actually, in all of my research, I didn't really find any news article that mentioned anything about having a direct evidence or more like an actual witness to the crime. And, my initial reaction to this was like, oh, okay, this case is weak because it's based on circumstantial evidence. But I actually read somewhere when I googled the difference between direct and circumstantial that even though circumstantial evidence isn't as strong as direct evidence, the government can still use it to prove their case. And because ultimately the jury or judge, depending on who the fact finder is, has the final say on how much weight to give each piece of evidence. And this is called the strength of the evidence. And also, if the fact finder or the person conducting the investigation relies on circumstantial evidence, the conclusion must be reasonable and natural, based on common sense and life experience. And that's probably why they're called the judge or whatever. Like I said, I really fell down on a rabbit hole in this one. For instance, I also learned that the difference between direct and circumstantial, Last week, I just learned that last week because I read this simple explanation, something like, for example, if somebody you know, or your mom, for example, let's say your mom comes to you and says she saw it rain today, and then you have direct evidence that it did. When she said that, that's your direct evidence because she saw it herself. But if your mom said she woke up and noticed that the ground was wet, then you have circumstantial evidence that it rained. She didn't see it rain, but it's reasonable assumption that, if the ground is wet, then it must have rained. Something like that. So, yeah, if you want to learn more about that, direct and circumstantial evidence, you can go ahead and do your own digging, you guys, because these are really interesting, at least for me. And, more food for your brain. Okay, moving on. During the investigation, there were a lot of sworn statements that were taken, but only a few of these testimonies were actually used to charge Midel and Strunk with murder, and Mike Martinez was presumed dead after going missing. And actually, Rod Strunk was in the United States when he was charged with Blanca's murder in 2003. But a year early, on July 2002, he was accused of plotting Nida Blanca's murder by the NBI, but he had already fled to the US 5 months earlier. And yes, that's January 2002. He left the Philippines to go see his dying mother, but he never came back. Later on, he was arrested at his home in the US and taken to the Sacramento County Jail after the Philippine government sent a request to extradite Strunk to stand trial. But again, because of the circumstantial evidence presented, the U.S. court denied the request to extradite or hand over Strunk, and he was let out of the Sacramento jail right away. And despite filing a second extradition request for Strunk, the Philippine government did not hear back from the U.S., and the two became mortal enemies since then. I'm just kidding. Okay. Anyway, and this is another heavy part of the story, guys. So brace yourself, you guys, because this is about Rod Strunk's death. And actually, Strunk killed himself on July 11, 2007, 6 years after Nida Blanca died, by jumping off a second floor balcony at the Tracy Inn in Tracy, California, where he had been staying for the past 3 days. He was 68, and the police said it looked like Strunk killed himself by jumping, and they found evidence in his room that showed he did. And Philip Midel, the suspect, he was still considered as a suspect, and he was locked up until he died on April 7, 2010, when he was 62 years old. Midel died at the Philippine General Hospital of sepsis, which was caused by pneumonia. And the case had been going on for 20 years, actually, and it was still in the evidence presentation phase, sadly. Because of a provision in our law that states criminal liability is extinguished upon the death of the accused, sadly, this case will never go on trial. Okay? So in other words, it looks like this murder will never be solved, and that's really, really sad. And it is upsetting and frightening all at the same time to consider, the possibility that the real killer or mastermind is still at large and has been going about their life normally for the past 20 years. That's so upsetting to me. Yeah, to think that this will never be solved. Oh my gosh. And so, guys, this concludes the story of the terrible and depressing case of Miss Nida Blanca. May she rest in peace. So I know we ended on a sad note, so let's talk about something completely different. Hopefully this will make your day a little better. Okay, you guys? So let's shift directly to, positive note, okay? So I'm going to talk to you about self-care. And I know you've heard this a lot of times. Self-care, 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 whatever. And just to remind all of us that we really do need to, take care of ourselves. So we all know that mental health problems are getting worse. The rate of depression has actually increased, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. For example, you or someone you know may need help. You need to take care of yourself so that you can help others. Now, when it comes to thinking of ways to take care of yourself, think about these parts of your life and how you can make them better. You should not force yourself to practice self-care, okay? Self-care activities will give you energy and help you take care of yourself and the people around you. If you're having trouble coming up with ways to take better care of yourself, Here are 4 easy ones. And I found this information in the Mental Health First Aid article, which I find very helpful. And I'm actually doing this myself now. So, guys, we are on this together. Okay. Number 1, move more. Okay. Physical activity can help the brain deal with stress better, which makes it a good way to treat depression and anxiety. And regular exercise has also been shown to make the immune system stronger, which is especially important as we keep fighting COVID-19. You can also use your workout routine to spend more time outside, and it might be easier to find time for walks, hikes, or runs, which is why I actually walk every day from the office to my apartment, because why not? And studies have shown that spending time outside can help you feel less tired. This makes it a great way to deal with the symptoms of burnout or depression. Number 2, eat a healthy, balanced diet. The foods and beverages we consume can have an impact on our mood as well as how well our bodies are able to prevent, treat, and recover from infections. Okay? If you're feeling anxious or sick, eating certain foods can help ease your anxiety or make neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine flow more freely. Try to eat as many fruits, veggies, and whole grains as you can with each meal. And there are also fatty fish, leafy greens, and nuts that are good for you. If you eat too much takeout or too many processed foods, you should try cooking, and it's a great way to relax and get nutrients your body needs. Number 3, prioritize sleep. This is very important. Sleep has a big effect on how you feel, both physically and mentally. With all of the problems caused by the pandemic, you may be feeling more, stressed, but getting enough sleep can help you have better days. When you get enough sleep, your mood will be more stable, your brain will work better, and you'll have more energy to get through the day. And make sure you get enough rest by going to bed around the same time every night, because most adults need between 7 to 8 hours of sleep each night. And try some relaxation exercises or meditation if you can't fall asleep. You can also stop using social media or put your phone away, and you might also be able to sleep better if you cut back on caffeine and sugar. If you work from home, try to separate where you work and where you sleep. And last but not the least, number 4, plan self-care and set boundaries. Take a minute to think about how you can move forward in your life while staying grounded. It's important to set aside regular time for self-care and plan to do something that makes you happy and helps you relax. Setting boundaries can help you feel safe and at ease in your surroundings if you're feeling anxious, especially if you have pandemic-related worries. Setting rules about physical safety with family and friends or putting limits on certain activities are 2 ways to set boundaries. And another approach, make a list of the things you know you don't like or don't want to do anymore. You might not check your email at night or answer your phone during meals as examples. Learning to say no to things that stress you out too much will be good for your mental health. Just consider the advice we received on airplanes, or even if you haven't tried traveling by plane, you'd probably know this one from movies and TV shows and whatever. Put your own oxygen mask before assisting others. If you don't take care of yourself, you won't be able to assist others, okay? Similarly, if you do not take care of your body and mind, you will not be your best self, especially when others need you. With a self-care routine that brings you joy, you will experience improved mental and physical health, and that includes being present for those in need. Okay? So guys, I hope that helped you in some way, and thank you so much for spending your time listening to me. And stay tuned for another episode next week. And by the way, I also have another podcast. I actually started another podcast called Filling in the Gaps. Filling is spelled Philling. Okay, and the podcast is about Philippine society, culture, and history. And so, if that interests you, go ahead and look it up and enjoy listening. So, have a great day ahead, you guys. Do what you gotta do for today, and don't forget to also do something nice for someone else. Okay, and remember, be better. Bye.